Today on the Forgiven Nutritionist podcast, I'm talking with Quinn McMillian. She's been coaching for almost 2 years and is an integrative nutrition health coach, as well as a certified intuitive eating counselor. She specializes in helping people heal their relationship with food and their bodies. She works through an anti-diet and has an HAES, health at every size lens. Quinn believes in the power of active listening and using a holistic approach when helping someone embody their best self. Her coaching style is non-judgmental, and she inspires her clients to be gentle on themselves. Here's a clip from today's show. It definitely changes your whole outlook and attitude about the food. So, I'm going to have to do that tonight when I cook dinner, I think, again.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I feel like that can really just like take you out of your head too. If you're like stressed about something at work, or, you know, you have a personal problem or whatever's going on in your life, like just taking that moment and that time to like focus on what you're eating. And, you know, if you're eating with your loved ones or whatever, like just having a conversation with them and being present in that moment really just helps. I know that's definitely something that I feel like our society, specifically in the United States, we definitely struggle with. It's just like, we're in a capitalist society. Like, we're constantly moving, trying to get on to the next thing, trying to work through things as fast as possible. And slowing down and taking that time for ourselves really just, it helps so much.
Hey everyone, just a quick break to show some gratitude to our sponsors and give you some special deals. If you are looking for a trustworthy place to choose all of your supplements, FullScript has 285 different brands to choose from. They did the work for you to check quality standards for all the supplements they carry. These standards are important because they help to ensure a product is safe, effective, and accurately labeled. FullScript uses third-party companies to provide unbiased assurance that certain quality criteria are met when they add a company or product to their inventory. When you set up an account with FullScript, use my link and you'll always get 15% off your supplements. Thank you so much for being on today, Quinn. I really appreciate you joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to talk with you today.
I'm a little familiar with you because you and I currently are enrolled in IIN together to become board certified. So why don't you tell my listeners a little bit about yourself and how you ended up maybe going to IIN, or maybe why you started coaching intuitive eating?
Yeah. Well, I've been a certified integrative nutrition health coach for almost 2 years now. And I've been practicing that with my own business. And I've been certified as an intuitive eating counselor for about 1.5 years. I found intuitive eating after the IIN program to become a health coach. And it just really stuck with me. And I just felt like the values really aligned with my values. And there were a lot of conversations about different diets with the IIN program. And I would say that I'm very anti-diet. And so finding intuitive eating just really stuck with me. And I was like, wow, this is really great. I wish that everyone could just be an intuitive eater and there wouldn't be all of this outside external noise. And it just, it would just come internally with what you eat, when you eat, and why or how you eat.
Yeah, that's one of the things that, and I know that you attended IIN prior to when I attended it. And in our class, we did learn about a lot of different diets. And back in the day, I will say that I was a leader at a large diet group that you find in a lot of local strip malls nowadays. I won't say the name, but and I look back thinking, some of them have a lot of good qualities in the sense that you can join with other people, and there's the good. You get to feel like you're not alone, because sometimes when you do a diet, you do kind of feel like you're stuck in this alone. And so I think that's the only real benefit that, thinking back from when I was a leader, which like I said, I couldn't believe I was, but it's always good to go through things with other people and to know that you're not alone. And I think that's the main beautiful thing that we kind of learned at IIN also, is that we're literally coaching you and helping you so that you do feel like you're not alone, because it can be very overwhelming and daunting no matter what diet you are. And I think a lot of times when people have the word diet associated to something, they immediately go in panic or overwhelm mode, which can be very easy for a
Totally.
lot of people to do.
Yeah, that's very true. And yeah, I definitely think that is a big benefit of, diet groups like that, to be able to have that sense of community. And yeah, I would say that with intuitive eating specifically, that is something that I think they're trying to work on more and try and get more of a community, because it's still, even though it's been around for a little while now, it's still fairly new to people. Not a lot of people know it, or if they do, or if they've heard of it, they still have a lot of like misconceptions of it. And so I do think that that is something that intuitive eating could definitely improve on, is like having that sense of community. So, you don't feel so isolated, because especially when you are, learning the different principles of intuitive eating and first starting on that journey, it can feel very isolating. And especially if you have a lot of family members like I do, like who are big diet people and who are always, talking about whatever diet they're on or their weight loss journey or whatever, it can feel very isolating. But there are people out there who are practicing intuitive eating, and that you are able to find a community if you do look. Yes, it takes a little while and a little searching, but there are people out there, and yeah, I just hope that it continues to grow.
Well, and since you mentioned some principles for intuitive eating, why don't you tell us some principles of intuitive eating, so that way people can be a little more familiar with it and maybe see if that might spark a little interest in them as well.
Yeah, definitely. Well, there are 10 basic principles of intuitive eating. I'll just read them off and then I can talk a little about them. The first one is rejecting the diet mentality. So that is the first step for a reason. It's obviously very important before you start getting into the intuitive eating journey, that you leave behind the diet mentality, because otherwise you won't be able to move forward with intuitive eating. It just doesn't work. So that is the first step for a reason. The second one is honoring your hunger. So making sure that you are listening to those hunger cues. The third one is making peace with food. There's no food morality involved with intuitive eating. There's no good foods. There's no bad foods. There's just food. The fourth one is challenging the food police. So the food police are, those voices in your head, or those very real voices. Like, for example, an aunt, you're sitting at the table and eating cake or whatever, and she's saying, "Are you really going to eat that another piece of cake?" So that's the food police. And then the fifth one is feel your fullness. So making sure you're also getting in touch with your fullness cues again, which can be a little difficult, but with some practice, it's definitely possible. The sixth one is discovering the satisfaction factor. This is super important with intuitive eating, is really just like making sure that you are enjoying what you're eating. Like that's the whole purpose of eating, is to enjoy what you're putting in your body, no matter what it is. So finding that satisfaction factor is definitely important. The seventh principle is coping with your feelings without using food. Another big part of intuitive eating is making sure that you are also checking with yourself emotionally and making sure that you're not, yes, of course, it is almost impossible to not, have emotions when you're eating food. And like as a society, it's hard to like separate our emotions from food, right? If it's your birthday, you're eating cake and you're celebrating with your family. There's emotions involved with that. If you got a promotion or something, you go out for a celebratory dinner. So it is hard to take away the emotions, and that's not the goal at all. But it's to make sure that your only way of coping isn't using food. So that's the main point there. And number 8 is respecting your body. Like body acceptance, all of that really goes hand in hand with intuitive eating. They really focus on HAES, which, if you don't know, that's health at every size. That's definitely what intuitive eating practices, that you can be healthy at every size. So it's very body inclusive. Number 9 is exercise, feel the difference. So really changing the, external like values that you can get from exercising to internal. So like, how does it make you feel? Like, does running make you feel better? Does it help your mental health? Anything like that. And then the last principle is number 10, honor your health with gentle nutrition. So finally, the last step is incorporating back in that nutrition aspect of it, because of course, yes, everybody needs to stay healthy and eat their vegetables and everything like that. So that is also, and I think that is another misconception that a lot of people have, is that it's not healthy to be an intuitive eater. You just eat what you want when you want. But really, that's not the case at all. It's definitely also incorporating that nutrition aspect into it as well.
Well, that's definitely good to know too, because I think there's a lot of misconceptions with a lot of diets out there, even including just the intermittent fasting, for example. They just think, oh, I'm just going to skip a meal. Well, so you're skipping pizza, and beer for a day, but then, later on you're going to have pizza and beer anyways. So it really has to go more than just skipping a meal, or to your point, it's more than just eating what you want when you want. There is some nutrition involved as well. The voices, when you mentioned the voices, I feel a little empathy for my husband, because since I've started my health and wellness journey, I should really blame him, honestly, because he was first diagnosed with diabetes. And so that's what kind of put me over the edge. I had already started some of my health and wellness journey, but since I started my health and wellness journey, he's been kind of hoodwinked or suckered into the rest of it. And now I feel like, unfortunately, I watch him like a hawk, and I'm probably the voices in his head sometimes. So unfortunately, I'm the victim I'm guilty of that. I must admit, but it's only because, I want him around a little longer, right?
Totally. Yeah. And I never see anything wrong with that, and I never judge or blame an individual person. Like, diet culture is a big system in our society. It's not just, one single person's problem or something that they're enforcing onto another person. Like, it's this giant system. And yes, there is a lot of value to eating healthy and, incorporating nutrition, but that can be done with intuitive eating without the rigidity and the rules that diets have.
So why don't you tell me, how is it different from traditional dieting or a structured meal plan?
Right. Yeah. So intuitive eating is not a diet. It isn't a structured meal plan. It is, the series of principles that you follow. So yes, there is a bit of structure, of course, but it's more of a framework that you learn, you practice, and then you kind of just get rid of it, if that makes sense. The goal is to just become so comfortable around food and trust your body so much that there isn't any fear, or there doesn't have to be any rules, because you just trust your inner signals and that inner wisdom that your body is telling you what it needs, how much it needs, that kind of thing. So yes, there is a period of learning those different principles and practicing them, but yeah, the main goal is to just trust yourself really around food.
Well, and I liked the one principle that you mentioned as well, that there's no good foods or bad foods. And that was one of the things that we learned at IIN as well. That was big in our class. We kept touching on how, and again, I can be kind of guilty of this as well. I look at food but I unfortunately, I like to think that I look at food in the sense that I'm choosing not to eat, and I'll use cake, for example, because I don't want to put that in my body. It's not that I can't have it or I don't want it. I do want the cake sometimes, but I'm choosing not to have it. So I'm trying to give myself the power back, and I don't want to look at it as a bad food. It's just something that I'm choosing not to. And so I think that's one thing that I think a lot of people do look at something like cake or pie or chips. And yes, they're definitely not great for you. But if you have it once, it's not going to be the one thing that kills you. It's the repeated things. And just, you need, like you said, you need to get in tune with how you feel afterwards. And once you remove some of those things, you definitely notice a difference when you do have it. again and how you feel afterwards. And then I remember back to, I used to be a big soda drinker, for example, and I can't even imagine having soda anymore because now that I've stepped away from it, I feel so much better and I don't want to feel how I used to feel previously.
Right.
No matter how good that soda tastes, I'd rather have the feeling than that one flavor in my mouth for a little while.
Totally. Yeah. And yeah, I think that is another thing about intuitive eating is, of course, it's always about balance. And there's something called giving yourself unconditional permission to eat, which helps you to, like you said, just like get more in touch with how different foods make you feel, and just kind of take away that like not obsession because we don't like that word, but just kind of that like fixation, I guess, about specific foods like cake, for example. So if you give yourself unconditional permission to eat, yeah, I could have the cake if I wanted to, and that would be totally fine and it would taste great. But yeah, I'm not really feeling that right now. And I know that after I eat, like I had a bit of a heavier dinner or whatever. So I think that would like put me over the edge in terms of fullness or whatever. So it's like taking that into account, I guess. But knowing that if you wanted it 100%, you can have the cake, and you also try to not feel any guilt about eating it too. That's another process that we try and work through, is just removing that guilt, because that doesn't help anything to feel guilty about how you're eating. If you're going to eat a food, you want to enjoy it fully. So that's definitely another thing we work on.
Yeah, and that was going to be part of my next question to you, was talking about how it helps you develop a healthier relationship with food, because I know that when people do put limitations on food, whether it's something good or bad, much like people do with cholesterol, for example, whether it's food or not food, if you put such a limitation on something without knowing everything in full, I think that definitely helps you gain an unhealthy relationship. And it definitely limits you. So I would imagine that having something like intuitive eating, where you become more in tune with your body as well, like you said, can definitely have you have a healthier relationship with food.
Yeah, absolutely. That is one of the main benefits of intuitive eating, is really just helping you heal your relationship with food, and just taking away the stress, because to me, that is the worst thing about diets, is you're just constantly thinking about food. Like, can I have this? Can I not? Like, this is going to send me over the edge, like calories wise, all of that. It's just like so much noise and stress constantly in your head that you're just always thinking about food. And intuitive eating just like gets rid of all of that and just has you listen to your body, trust your hunger and fullness cues that it's giving you, trust that when you're eating it, you'll know when to stop, and you can just go on with your day and just, spend time doing the things that you want to do and that you want to be thinking about, rather than, constantly thinking about food.
Yeah, just as you were mentioning that, it made me think about how when people do get stressed, it definitely raises their cortisol level, which makes them can make them unhealthier, which then can also spike blood sugars and cause other problems as well. So yeah, that's definitely something that maybe people would want to think about too. Because if they get a better, healthier relationship with food and become more intuitive with their eating, that definitely may help lower some of those cortisol levels, for example, and who doesn't want less stress in their life, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, totally. And there are over 125 different studies that prove, the different benefits of intuitive eating, like you said, lower cortisol levels, more balanced like blood sugar. And yeah, just like takes away that food obsession. Intuitive eating can also be used as a tool to help people who have struggled with eating disorders. It's a little bit further on in the like process of, healing that eating disorder, but then eventually like moving into intuitive eating. But that is definitely something that it can help with. It also, when you're, using mindful eating, for example, with intuitive eating, because that's also an aspect of it. Slower eating and being mindful helps with digestion. So it can also help with like digestive disorders. and just like increases your quality of life because you're not, like I said, like focusing on food constantly. You're able to spend more time doing the things you love.
No, just when you mentioned digestive disorders, I thought of about 5 people that I know. I think we all know somebody who's always talking
Oh,
about
yeah.
some kind of IBS or IBD or, they always feel crappy and they feel bloated and, after they eat. And so, yeah, I think we could all use a little more intuitive eating, to be honest with you.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree.
How can someone differentiate the difference between physical hunger and emotional hunger when they practice intuitive eating?
Well, I actually, if you are interested, I have an emotional eating chart that I made that kind of helps you take you through that process of determining, like, am I physically hungry or am I emotionally hungry? And then, if you go through it and you answer that you are emotionally hungry rather than physically, then there's, different things you can do for those specific feelings, whether that's, you're feeling loneliness or boredom or depression or whatever it is. There's tools that you can use that would help with whatever you're feeling rather than turning to food. But when looking at physical symptoms and listening to those hunger cues, intuitive eating helps you just kind of focus on those physical symptoms. For example, like, rumbling tummy, headache, irritability, like difficulty concentrating, feeling faint. Any of those are kind of the biological signs that your body's telling you you're hungry. And of course, it's like individual for everyone. So it's not always going to look the same. Some people will have different signs that they're hungry. So it's really just kind of having to listen to your body and figure out when you're getting hungry. And a good like rule, I guess, to just think, no, not rule, but a good like guideline, I guess, to think of is, has it been about 4 or 5 hours without eating? Probably hungry.
And that chart that you have, you said you made it yourself?
Yes, I did.
That's awesome. Is it on your website?
It's not on my website, but if you go to my website and email me, I will send that to you totally for free. So yeah, definitely reach out if you are interested.
That's great because I will have your website information in the show notes, so people can definitely click on that and get that from you.
Yeah.
So how do you think social pressures and kind of impact people to practice especially when they're trying to practice intuitive eating?
I would say that is probably the main barrier that kind of sets people back from beginning their intuitive eating journey, or is just like a big obstacle for people, really, because it's everywhere. Diet culture is everywhere. It's in the media, it's in shows, it's in TV. It's on billboards that you're driving past. It's just everywhere, constantly, all the time. It's influencers on social media that are telling you what to eat and, buy this new product and it'll help you lose weight or whatever it is. And it's everywhere. And diet culture really profits off of us not being happy with how our bodies look. And so if you think about it like that, really, like, intuitive eating is an act of resistance against that big system of diet culture. And that's another reason why I love it so much. Because yeah, it's focusing internally rather than on all the external voices. But yes, of course, that can be very, very hard for people, especially when they're first starting out, because, they just leave their house and they're like, oh, diet culture. So it is very hard to, like, focus on intuitive eating. But if you work with an intuitive eating counselor, which you can find on the Intuitive Eating Pros website, you can actually find like local intuitive eating counselors in your area on the website. And if you work with someone like that, or there's a big group of us on social media who are constantly talking about intuitive eating. If you find those groups of people to, like, really lean on and gain support from, it's very possible to become an intuitive eater, for sure.
Yeah, and social media seems to be everywhere. I'm glad that social media was nowhere around when I was growing up because, man, life was hard enough without social media. So I feel bad for people that are like you, unfortunately, and which is my children's generation, because it is everywhere. And like I said, I know how hard it was growing up, struggling with the same diet culture, or knowing what your friends looked like when you went to school, or seeing commercials on TV then. But now there's literally no escaping the constant struggle that I think that people kind of deal with in their head. Do I look good enough? Especially for that, 10 seconds that they see somebody else living on social media. And they all want the quick fix. We live in an Amazon society where everything, you can get it in a day or two. And that's what they want. They want the results in a day or two. And things do not happen in a day or two. If you want real good quality results, it's not going to happen in a day or two, unfortunately.
Exactly. Yeah. And unfortunately, intuitive eating it's a long and difficult process, but it is also extremely rewarding, and it's sustainable. It lasts you your lifetime. I have gone through the different principles. I feel pretty good in where I'm at on my intuitive eating journey. And I know that if I just keep practicing it, like this is how I can live the rest of my life. And I don't need to listen to any of those external voices, because I have all of the answers inside myself. So yes, it is hard, but it's also extremely worth it, in my opinion.
Isn't that pretty much life in general, really, when you stop and think about it?
Totally.
If we would all just listen to ourselves a little bit more, rather than the voices that are literally around us, or to your point, like you said, on billboards or magazines, or, on social media, if we would just listen to ourselves rather than all the other chatter, I think we would all be a lot healthier and happier.
Yeah, absolutely.
So do you have any success stories or personal experiences with yourself, or maybe individuals you've coached, that you've seen positive changes in their lives?
The biggest one is myself, for sure. I learned about intuitive eating. I did the course. I feel like I know a good amount of it, and I've been practicing the principles, in my everyday life. And really the biggest difference I noticed after kind of practicing the principles for a little while is just that I'm not constantly thinking about food. Yes, like I'll, like think about where we're going for dinner or whatever and like get excited about it. But I'm not like, what should I eat? Like I need to go look at the menu. I need to find out like how many calories it is, like what's in there. I need to find the perfect healthy choice or whatever it is. I'm just focusing on more important things in my life. It's not a worry for me. I'm not stressed out by food constantly. I just feel more comfortable in myself too. I think for a while I was very like disconnected with my body too and my mind. And intuitive eating is just a wonderful way to kind of just like connect the two, connect your body and mind. Because you're really focusing on those hunger and fullness cues and just like what your body is telling you internally. And yeah, I feel like that has just helped me so much. And yeah, I have seen, the results in a few of the people I've worked with, for sure. They're still like pretty new on their journey. So yes, it's going to take a little while, but, I think it's very easy to like, just kind of learn the principles and like kind of start practicing them a little bit.
Since you mentioned the principles again, and I'm kind of throwing this question out to you, because I have not done intuitive eating, nor have I coached it to anyone or taken the course. Do you start just by doing one step at a time with intuitive eating, or do they tell you all of them and you kind of work through all of them at the same time?
When you're working with a client, and intuitive eating, I usually, of course, everyone's a bio individual. Like everyone has their own individual needs and their own areas that they are particularly struggling with. So, of course, like with each of the people I work with, I really try and focus on the areas that they need the most help and support with. But yes, normally you try and like go step by step if you can. If there's a step that like they feel very confident in, you can kind of like, cruise through it a little bit, and focus more on the areas that they need help with. But, yeah, I would say it is pretty important to kind of follow the steps. Some of them are definitely more important than others. some you definitely can't skip over. And yeah, it's definitely individual. What areas people need more support with is definitely individual. So,
well, that's good. I think and I don't know what made me all of a sudden think of that question, but I think, you hear 10 steps or like with AA, 12 steps, it might be, that might give people a little sense of calm knowing that you're not going to throw 10 steps at them and they have to do all 10 right away.
Yeah, no. It's definitely a long process.
Yeah, for me too. Personally, I'd be like, oh my gosh, I have to do all 10 right away. Like, how am I going to do that? Especially if you're already struggling with certain things, it's probably a lot
totally.
better physically, mentally, emotionally, just to go one or two at a time. And like you said, I would imagine that some people are much more confident in one step versus another. And one step they may take a little longer to grasp a hold of or to really feel comfortable in before they can move to the next one. So that's good.
Yeah, we definitely take it slow. And there's always, checkpoints where I'm like, how do you feel on this current principle? Do you feel like you're ready to move on to the next one? Should we spend a little bit more time in it? And of course, there are like many resources that I would give my clients and, books, like podcasts, whatever, to help them on whatever part they're stuck on. And like we do journaling too. And I have journaling prompts for each kind of principle that we can work through and different assessments to kind of help. A lot goes into it for sure.
So how does intuitive eating contribute to emotional and overall well-being? Do you think it's definitely positive? Like, tell me some information about that. Because I know for me, my passion is definitely people that struggle with any kind of depression, anxiety, just emotional stability. So I'm all for anything that's going to help contribute to the overall health and well-being of somebody's brain. So
yes, intuitive eating is definitely helpful for mental and emotional well-being. Like I said, like it takes away, food is just another thing that we're thinking about, right? So if we can at least get that off of our brains, then of course, like our mental health and emotional well-being are going to improve. And we'll be able to kind of focus more on other aspects of ourselves. I think also it can be really helpful for specifically anxiety. I know that, when I had a period of time where I was super anxious all the time, it'd be hard to even like sit down and eat and, get down that food, and being able to sit down, be mindful and present, and really just focusing on what you're eating. What does it taste like? What does it smell like? What does it remind you of? What's the texture, temperature? These are all things that we help you look at in intuitive eating. And just being mindful, you're just able to stop and like actually enjoy the food that you're eating, and taking that time out of your day too, to just kind of like come back to yourself, focus in on what's going on internally. How are you feeling? All of that really just is another way to increase your well-being.
Now that you just mentioned that, I just remembered taking a course not too long ago at the School for Applied Functional Medicine, and it was all about gut health. And that was one of the things we really focused on was digestion, and how digestion begins in your mouth. And and I still to this day am still guilty of this, even after just recently taking this course. But we all kind of rush through our food, no matter if we're sitting at a restaurant or we're sitting down at dinner. And digestion really begins in the mouth, and that's definitely going to help you your overall health. Also, when you chew your food and notice, like you said, the smells. What does it smell like? What does it actually taste like? Oh, I can notice the pepper in this steak, or, just little things like that. Really, it definitely changes your whole outlook and attitude about the food. So I'm going to have to do that tonight when I cook dinner, I think, again.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I feel like that can really just like take you out of your head too. If you're like stressed about something at work, or, you have a personal problem or whatever's going on in your life, like just taking that moment and that time to like focus on what you're eating. And, if you're eating with your loved ones or whatever, like just having a conversation with them and being present in that moment really just helps. I know that's definitely something that I feel like our society, specifically in the United States, we definitely struggle with. It's just like we're just, I mean, we're in a capitalist society. Like we're constantly moving, trying to get on to the next thing, trying to work through things as fast as possible. And slowing down and taking that time for ourselves really just, it helps so much. And I mean, you can see it in other places in the world where, you know, like for Spain, for example, like they really focus on sitting down, enjoying your food, spending time with your friends and family and loved ones. And it works for them. And I think our society would definitely benefit from that.
Yeah, unfortunately, us in America, we do have a lot of IBD and IBS issues, Crohn's. And I do think that a lot of that is due to us just, first of all, not chewing our food and just taking time to just chew and enjoy our food, because then our body has to work so much harder with the lump of solid food material that it now has to try to digest, when we should have been chewing our food to help it digest it. And I think when we chew our food, it's going to help us enjoy the flavors more as well, too. So yeah, like I said, I'm definitely going to sit down and think about my food tonight a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely.
Are there specific tips or recommendations that you would give someone who maybe is thinking about starting intuitive eating, or are there cautions that maybe you may throw out if they want to just start doing it?
Yeah, I would definitely recommend going onto the Intuitive Eating website, Intuitive Eating Pro's website, and finding local intuitive eating counselors in your area, and definitely working with one. It makes such a difference. It is really hard to just do by yourself. And like you said, like it can feel very intimidating and overwhelming if you're just, you know, you just go into it without knowing anything and there's 10 principles that you have to work on. It's definitely overwhelming, but working with a counselor can really like help you just slow it down, take it step by step. That support means so much when you're going through this journey. So definitely would recommend that. If you can't, of course, it is still possible. I would definitely then suggest, if you aren't getting they have an intuitive eating workbook that you can buy. And that is a really helpful, just like do it yourself kind of process. They have a lot of, you know, things that you can fill out and like prompts that you can answer that really just helps you like, you know, address those specific areas that you're working on. So yeah, they do have a lot of resources. You know, their book is wonderful. They really go in depth in every chapter about each of the principles. Their podcasts, lots of podcasts, following different intuitive eating counselors on social media is really helpful. Just seeing, you know, those small snippets every once in a while of helpful tricks and everything like that can be helpful. Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of resources out there. Yes, it takes a little bit to just kind of find them and look through them, but there's definitely support out there.
That's great. I will put that link in the show notes also for if somebody is interested in checking it out, so they can get some ideas. Totally. And of course, your website will be there as well, so they can immediately find you as well. And I'm assuming that you are able to see clients online as well as in person.
Yes. Yeah.
So how can intuitive eating be integrated for different lifestyles, like busy moms or professionals or someone who's an athlete? Does it matter?
I definitely think intuitive eating is for everyone. Yes, you know, it'll kind of differ on the person, whatever they have going on. If it's a busy mom, you do, you know, have to put a little bit more, I guess, effort into it. But yeah, I mean, another part of intuitive eating is also that it's a self-care framework. So just thinking ahead, you know, if I have a really busy day, maybe like the night before, packing some lunches, some snacks, whatever, to kind of know that you'll be able to get through the day with eating. Yeah, if you're like an athlete, I mean, really it all just comes back to listening to those hunger and fullness cues. And, you know, if you are an athlete, you're doing a lot more exercising and movement. Hopefully your body will be telling you that you need a little bit more food to kind of, you know, help you have the energy to do that extra movement. So it's definitely for everyone. Of course, everyone's going to adapt the principles into their own life differently, but it's definitely attainable.
I know we've touched on some of this already, but maybe you could refresh the listener's memory, or if somebody's just checking in now. Can you discuss the potential health benefits for intuitive eating? Like, I know we talked about digestion, but are there some other things that are good for intuitive eating?
Definitely the lowering levels of cortisol is definitely a big one. It also can help improve inflammation to kind of just like lessen it, because you're not, constantly stressing about food. You're not, just rushing through the experience. You're slowing down, and that really can help just lessen inflammation. Diabetes, definitely, it can be a valuable tool for. There have been studies that show that it helps that, and also improving blood sugar control. Also, just like a decreased risk of problematic eating. So also, like I said, with eating disorders, it can be a helpful tool at kind of the end process of that, but it is helpful for that. And then, the main things are just helping your mental and emotional well-being and improving your quality of life. That's definitely the biggest one, I'd say.
What about some practical tips for grocery shopping or meal planning to help support intuitive eating? I know it might be a little bio-individual for everybody. For example, I enjoy crab and salmon, but you may not. So, but are there some overall general good practical tips that you would have?
I would say the biggest one, because I know a lot of people, especially right now, like meal prep is a big thing. So when it comes to meal prep, the main thing that I would say is to not be strict about what meal you're going to have which day, like in advance. I would say, think about a few different meals that sound good to you during the week that you've been craving or that sound good to you. Buy the ingredients for those, and then kind of the day of decide what sounds good to you. So it's a little bit more like just in tune with yourself rather than like forcing yourself like, oh, I set this meal aside for this day and I need to eat it kind of thing. Cause that kind of goes against intuitive eating. So I'd say that's definitely helpful, thinking ahead, a few different meals, but then that day kind of choosing what sounds best to you. Is definitely in line with intuitive eating. A big thing for me too has been kind of like just really focusing on buying stuff that you actually are going to eat and that that you actually love. I know food waste is a big thing, and for a while personally, I would buy foods that I'm like, I should eat this, like whether it was like greens or whatever, and I'm like, I need to eat more greens, so I'm going to buy them. And then they just, they get hidden in the back of the fridge and they just go to waste. So really thinking about what are you actually going to eat? What do you actually enjoy? A big thing for me really in my intuitive eating journey was realizing that I'm not the biggest fan of like raw vegetables. I do enjoy more when they're cooked or when they're like incorporated into like whatever meal I'm having. So that's kind of been a big thing for me to kind of realize. So I love getting like frozen vegetables because then I can just like easily throw them in. I don't have to worry about food waste. I know I'm going to eat them and like them. So really just, not focusing so much on what you feel you should be eating or that you need to be eating, but focusing on what are you actually going to eat and what do you actually like to eat. So I think those are definitely some good tips to keep in mind.
I think that's one of the newest things that, in our health journey, since we've kind of did a complete 180, is that it's forced me to cook more. So we eat out almost never, but we're eating at home all the time. And so, you do have to get a little creative also with, and, at first for us anyways, and maybe this is going to follow a little bit along with intuitive eating, we stuck to a lot of the basics, just to get our feet under ourselves so we could kind of figure out, okay, what's the next step before we get a little creative with what we're going to make next. We just stuck with a lot of the basics, definitely the perimeter of the grocery store. And like you said, we just picked the things that we liked. And I tried, every once in a while I would experiment and try something that I thought that I should be eating. And sometimes it worked out and sometimes it didn't. But then you're not going to know unless you try, right?
Yeah. And I definitely encourage trying new things for sure. But then knowing that once you've tried it and you don't like it, just don't force yourself to buy it again is what I'd say.
Right.
But 100%, I'm all for trying new things. Definitely. Yeah.
And I know I'm throwing this question out to you as also. Do you ever, I know you probably don't meal prep. I'm sorry, not meal prep, give meal plans and stuff, but do you ever give recipes or stuff for people to try if they have questions or if they're kind of like in a holding pattern?
Yeah, I definitely give recipes. I definitely encourage people I work with to like search out new things that sound good to them. TikTok has been great for me. I love watching little, food videos and following the recipes. So yeah, I definitely think it, I do help and give out like some recipes, and it's always good to try new things and branch out a little bit too, I think, but also, sticking with what that you'll like, I think is important. But just staying away from that rigidity and like set plan, I think is the main thing.
I definitely agree with that as well. And I'm not an intuitive eating counselor. I definitely think it's good to have some kind of structure, but at the same time being flexible as well. Because, structure gives you, especially at the beginning, it can give you a sense of calm and a peace in a world that you're trying to change and fix when all these other variables are kind of up in the air. So it's good to sometimes have some little structure to what you're trying to do. But at the same time, you got to kind of expand your network a little bit and sometimes kind of reframe how you're thinking, which can be hard to do.
Oh, yeah. For sure.
What about some practical tips for exercise? How does that play into intuitive eating and with food and how people look and view their bodies?
I definitely say when it comes to exercising, moving your bodies, really focusing on what you enjoy. Exercising, moving your body should not feel like a punishment. It shouldn't feel forced. Yes, of course, it is very important to move our bodies and, to keep healthy and all of that. But I think it's important to find the different types of movement that we enjoy and that make us feel good. And there's so many different types of movement out there. There's swimming, there's tennis, there's yoga, Pilates. It doesn't have to just be the gym or, going for a run. Just even a walk around your neighborhood can be so beneficial. It doesn't have to be crazy. It doesn't have to be high impact. Really just focusing on what you enjoy, what sounds good to you in the moment, what would make you feel your best. So I think just really, really focusing on that rather than punishing yourself and forcing yourself to do exercise that you're just not going to enjoy or that is going to maybe even hurt you too. It's just, good to keep in mind.
Yeah, I think there's a meme where, and I'm not going to phrase it correctly, but it's something about we should look at exercise or moving our body as a blessing because we're able to do it rather than a curse or a punishment because we have to do it. Yeah. And so when I started, because personally, I do not enjoy working out. I'm not one of those people that loves to go work out, but I love how I feel afterwards. And the only reason I do it is because I know that my body and brain benefit from it so much. And I don't hate it by any means, but it's just, I love the aftermath and what I'm getting from it after I've done it,
Totally.
And, but I definitely enjoy taking my dogs for a walk. That's one of the things I enjoy as well. Not always when it's 20 below or something like that.
Right.
I don't do it, but there are days it's not as enjoyable, but I do enjoy taking them for a walk. So in wintertime, people can ski. That's a good way to get some good movement and exercise.
Yeah, there's so many options out there for sure. And I think just experimenting too, because sometimes you might be surprised what you enjoy.
Before I ask you where the listeners can find you and follow you, I always ask my guests guest for their don't miss this moment. And it would be kind of the one real good key takeaway that they would want the listener to remember or really think about. And what would your don't miss this moment be?
That yes, intuitive eating is a 10 principle process. It is a total, paradigm shift of what is everywhere all the time in society, being thrown at you, telling you what to do. And it can be pretty hard, especially at the beginning, to kind of just like completely rewire your brain. But it is so beneficial and sustainable and just something that you're going to keep with you for the rest of your life. And it really does completely transform many different aspects of your life. And just not being able to, or being able to just stop stressing about food is so amazing and wonderful. And yeah, just the increase in your quality of life and well-being, I think is just so worth it to stick with it and just keep moving forward and practicing those principles.
That's awesome. And so where can everyone find you, follow you, all those things?
Yeah. My Instagram username is at Feel and Heal with Me. My website is feelandhealwithme.com. You can schedule any sessions with me that you're interested in. Check me out on there. My LinkedIn is just my name, Quinn McMillian. Those are good places to find me.
I will include some of those in the show notes as well, so people can just click and immediately find you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for being on today. I'm glad that we got a chance to work this out, and I'm glad that you were in my breakout room in school so we could arrange this. I think it was a good session. I think people are really going to enjoy it.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm so glad. This was so awesome. Thank you for having me.
Pendulum Probiotics is a powerhouse in gut wellness. Akkermansia, Metabolic Daily, and Glucose Control all contain Akkermansia, which is a key player in gut health. It fosters the growth of Akkermansia, aiding in digestion, nutrient absorption, immune resilience, and a positive impact in your overall well-being. If you're ready to experience Pendulum Probiotics, unlock an exclusive 20% discount on your first month's membership by entering my unique code when you click on the Linktree link in the show notes. If you want to continue learning and hearing all things nutrition for your mind, body, and spirit, click like, subscribe, or favorite me on whatever podcast platform you use. Or you can find me at ForgivenNutritionist.com. This podcast was designed to educate, inspire, and empower you to achieve your health and wellness goals with your current healthcare provider. It is not meant to diagnose or treat any illness or medical condition or take the place of any treatments from your current healthcare providers.